An unexpected act of kindness. My story. My life, up until that moment, was pretty standard for a 20-year-old student in Kyiv. I was studying journalism, working part-time as a barista in a small coffee shop near the university, and living in a dormitory. Money was always tight, and every month was a struggle for survival. Tuition fees, dorm rent, food, transportation. My parents live in a small town and couldn't help much, so I was used to relying only on myself. I was quite cynical, believing that everyone was for themselves, and that in a big city, kindness was a rarity, and sincerity was almost an exception. This story proved to me how wrong I was. It happened in late November. The exam session was approaching, and I was swamped with studies. On top of that, my hours at the coffee shop were cut, and I lost a significant portion of my income. I was desperate. I didn't have enough money to pay for the dorm for the next month, and my scholarship was still 2 weeks away. I tried to borrow from friends, but everyone had their own problems. The situation was critical. If I didn't pay, I could be evicted. And that would mean the end of my studies, my dreams of a career in journalism. The thought of having to pack my meager belongings and return home in defeat, abandoning everything I'd worked for, filled me with a cold dread that gnawed at my stomach constantly. Every conversation with my parents felt like a tightrope walk, trying to reassure them I was fine while secretly panicking about my dwindling funds. That day, I was returning from the university and a cold, fine rain was falling. I was exhausted and depressed. The gray Kyiv sky seemed to mirror my mood. I entered the subway to get to the dormitory. The air in the station was thick with the smell of damp concrete and stale air, filled with the low hum of distant trains and the murmur of hurried conversations. At the Teatralna station, I saw an elderly woman. She was sitting on a bench, her gaze bewildered, almost vacant, and in her hands she held a small, worn wallet. Her clothes, though clean, seemed thin for the biting November chill, and her shoulders were slightly hunched. She looked very tired and somewhat lost. I noticed her trying to get something out of her wallet several times, her fingers fumbling, but her hands were trembling so much she couldn't manage it. My first thought was, she probably forgot her wallet or lost her money. I was about to walk past as I was on the verge of despair myself, and it seemed to me that I had no right to think about other people's problems. My internal monologue was a harsh one. Anya, you barely have enough for yourself. The city is full of people with sob stories. Don't get involved. You can't afford to be a hero right now. But something stopped me. Perhaps her gaze, so helpless, so utterly devoid of the usual city hustle. It wasn't the look of someone trying to deceive. It was the look of genuine distress, a quiet plea for help that cut through my hardened cynicism. I remembered how utterly vulnerable and desperate I felt just minutes ago, contemplating being evicted. The thought of someone else experiencing that same raw fear, especially an elderly person, made my stomach clench. I approached her. "Do you need help?" I asked, my voice slightly uncertain, a little rusty from disuse in sex situations. She looked up at me, with her blue eyes filled with unshed tears that shimmered in the dim subway light. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes held a childlike vulnerability. She whispered, I can't find my travel pass, and I have no money. My wallet, it's empty. I need to get to Borispol, to my daughter. She's waiting."
I looked at her wallet. It was indeed empty. A few old receipts, the only contents. She must have either lost her money or, more likely, been robbed in the crowded metro. To Borispol? That was a significant journey, requiring multiple transfers and costing quite a bit, especially if you had to pay for each segment. I mentally calculated my own meager funds. I had exactly 85 hryvnias in my wallet. That was barely enough for the ride to the dorm and for a loaf of bread to last me until my next shift. If I gave her that money, I would be left with nothing. Absolutely nothing. A moment of intense hesitation. My inner cynical part screamed louder now. This is it. This is how they get you. She's probably a professional beggar, or worse, part of a scam. Don't get involved. You have your own problems. This is not your responsibility." My hand was already halfway to my pocket, but then I paused. Her eyes, they were so sincere, so full of genuine despair. There was no artifice, no manipulation in her gaze. It was pure, unadulterated need. I remembered how I felt just a few minutes ago thinking about my own eviction, the knot of fear in my stomach. The empathy, a feeling I hadn't realized I still possessed, pushed past my self-preservation instincts. "How much do you need?" I asked, my voice softer this time. "I don't know. 50 hryvnias to get to the train station, and then I'll figure it out." She lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper, as if ashamed to ask. I took out 50 hryvnias from my wallet. It felt like I was tearing a piece of my own security away. It was almost half of my last money I desperately needed. "Here," I extended the bill to her. "This should be enough to get you to Boryspil station. Just be careful." She looked up at me, and in her eyes, a spark of pure, unadulterated hope appeared. It was a transformation, from utter despair to a fragile hope that was almost breathtaking. "Oh, dear girl, thank you, darling. May God grant you health." She took the money, her hands still trembling, but now with gratitude. Her voice was thick with emotion. "You're welcome. Just be careful," I said, feeling a strange warmth spread through my chest, a counterpoint to the cold dread that had been my constant companion. I turned and walked towards the train, which was already approaching the station. I felt a little foolish, having given away almost my last money, knowing I had just made my own situation even more precarious, but at the same time, somehow light. A tiny, unexpected feeling of peace settled over me. I sat on the train, and my thoughts immediately returned to my own problems. The warmth from the act of kindness quickly faded, replaced by the biting reality of my empty wallet. How would I get to the dorm now? It was a long walk, and the rain was getting heavier. And what would I eat? I felt the fatigue and disappointment wash over me again, heavier than before, now compounded by my self-inflicted financial blow. The cynical voice in my head returned. "See, you're a fool. You just made your own life harder for a stranger." At the next station, Universitet, as the doors were closing, I heard a voice call out, "Girl, wait!" I looked up, and through the closing doors, I saw the elderly woman. She was holding something in her hand, trying to get my attention. Her face was a mixture of urgency and something I couldn't quite decipher. But the train was already moving, picking up speed. I shrugged, assuming she wanted to thank me again, or maybe she'd found some money and wanted to show me. I tried to push her out of my mind, focusing on my own dire situation and the long walk ahead. I got off at the next stop, Polytechnichny Institute, which was closer to my dorm, but still a walk. The rain had intensified, soaking my thin jacket through to the bone. I pulled my jacket tighter, shivering uncontrollably. As I walked, miserable and cold, a thought kept nagging at me. What if she hadn't found money? What if she was still stuck? What if she really needed more help? My cynical self argued, "You did your part. You can't save everyone. You can't afford to be a charity." But her eyes, those tearful, hopeful eyes, haunted me, refusing to be dismissed. The image of her lost face kept replaying in my mind. The walk to the dorm felt longer than usual, each step heavy with dampness and despair. The cold seeped into my bones, making me shiver uncontrollably. When I finally reached my room, I was soaked, miserable, and utterly defeated. I threw my bag onto the bed and pulled out my phone, contemplating calling my parents, even though I knew they couldn't help much. I just needed to hear a comforting voice. As I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb brushed against a notification I hadn't noticed before, an unread message from an unknown number. My heart gave a little flutter of annoyance, probably another spam message, but something made me open it. It was a photo. A blurry photo of a metro station platform taken from a low angle, and in the foreground, unmistakably, a crumpled 500 hryvnia bill, and beneath the photo, a message. "Thank you, Angel. You saved me. I found my daughter and she gave me this. You are a blessing. May God bless you 100-fold." My jaw dropped. 500 grivnas. That was more than 5 times what I had given her. It was enough to pay for my dorm for the month and even buy some groceries. My hands started to tremble, not from cold or despair, but from sheer disbelief and a sudden overwhelming rush of emotion. This wasn't a scam. This was real. This was an act of kindness returned, magnified beyond anything I could have imagined. It was a miracle. I immediately called the number. A woman's voice answered, not the elderly woman, but younger, vibrant. "Hello? Hi, my name is Anya. I think I just got a message from your mom?" I asked, my voice still shaky, a mix of awe and bewilderment. "Oh, yes! My mom, she's so excited. She told me all about you, the angel who helped her at the metro. She was so upset she'd lost her pass and all her money, and she was so worried about getting to me. She kept saying how you were a godsend, a true blessing. When she got here, I gave her some money, and she immediately insisted on sending you some back. She said you looked like you needed it too. Is that true?" I hesitated, a lump forming in my throat. "Well, I was having a tough time," I admitted, the words catching, "but I never expected this. I just wanted to help." "She insisted," the daughter said, her voice warm and genuine. "She said you were truly kind, and that kindness should always be repaid. She wanted to make sure you were okay. My mom, she has a good heart. She's visiting from a village and she gets a bit lost in the big city sometimes, but she always remembers kindness, and she believes in paying it forward."
We talked for a while. The daughter, whose name was Elena, thanked me profusely, and I, in turn, thanked her for her mother's incredible generosity. She even offered to meet up and treat me to coffee, but I politely declined, still trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. It felt too big, too sacred, to turn into a casual meeting. The next day, I paid my dorm rent. The online payment went through smoothly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a profound sense of relief. Not just financial, but emotional. I bought groceries, real food, not just bread and instant noodles. I even treated myself to a small, warm pastry from a bakery near the university, savoring every bite. The weight that had been crushing me for weeks lifted. It wasn't just the money, it was the feeling. The feeling that my small act of kindness, done without any expectation of reward, had been seen, appreciated, and returned in such an overwhelming way. It wasn't about the transaction, it was about the connection, the human touch in a city that often felt cold and indifferent. It was a reminder that even in moments of personal despair, there's always room for compassion, and that compassion can come back to you in unexpected, beautiful ways. This experience fundamentally changed my perspective. I learned that kindness isn't a weakness, it's a powerful force, a currency that transcends money. It can ripple outwards, creating unexpected connections and bringing light into the darkest moments. I realized that even when you're struggling yourself, extending a hand to someone else can bring a profound sense of purpose and even unexpected blessings. It taught me to look beyond my own immediate problems, to see the struggles of others, and to act with compassion, even when it feels like you have nothing to give. My cynicism, once a protective shield, began to crack, allowing a new sense of hope and interconnectedness to seep in. I'm still a student, still working hard, and money's still tight sometimes. But I carry that memory with me every day. It reminds me that the world isn't as cynical as I once thought. There are good people out there, ready to help and ready to repay kindness in ways you can never imagine. That elderly woman, whom I barely knew, taught me one of the most important lessons of my life. That true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the connections we make and the kindness we share. And sometimes the most unexpected acts of generosity come when you least expect them, from the people you least expect. Changing your world for the better, one small act of compassion at a time.
Thanks for watching. Now I'm really curious, what's the most unexpected event that has happened in your life? Share your story in the comments below. Maybe you also have something that turned your world upside down. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories. See you next time.